Just over 10 years ago, when I was in the Royal Academy, a museum in the centre of London with my 3 children at the Aztec exhibition. I don't know if any of you saw it. I had an older child and 2 younger children, twins, is shown in this picture. And one of my children, 3 years old, shouted. And I've never denied he shouted. He shouted, monster, monster, at this statue, which looked just like a monster. Had snakes for hair, a big beak for a nose. And I thought, this is fantastic. I got a 3-year-old that's appreciating pre-Hispanic art. How good can it get? So, I bent down. I said, yes, it looks just like a monster. And at that moment, a security guard came over, then a gallery assistant came over and said, we're being too noisy and threw us out. Roll the family. During that time, I was a journalist with the Guardian newspaper. And 2 days later, I wrote a big piece in the Guardian about being thrown out of the Royal Academy. And what was really interesting was by the end of that day, at a paper we had over 500 emails from other families saying museums aren't working for us. Let's try and make it work. So that's what we did in the garden. We set up a campaign for the Kids Museums campaign. It didn't really exist. It was just a few pages long run, those stories on it. I began touring the country talking about how to make your museum more family friendly. I was a journalist. I was called in to see the then director of the National Gallery in London. I'll never forget this moment, when he, a communist, said, we really like this Kids Museums campaign and we've been talking on our board about it. We have some ideas of how we might work together, and I'd like you to take them back to your team.
through the 1950s and into the 1960s. The idea of the Industrial Revolution was that it was the work of some genius inventors who created machines used primarily in the textile industry but also in mining that eliminated blocks to assembly line production. Then everybody was crowded into factories and the new brave world opened up. In fact, one of the most interesting books and great classics that is still in print was written by an economic historian at Harvard who's still alive called David Landis. It's a good book called The Unbound Prometheus, which was basically that. Some of the inventions that I briefly describe in your reading, the spinning jenny, etc., refer to that. Well, and that kind of analysis led one to concentrate on England where the Industrial Revolution began, and to view industrialization as being a situation of winners and losers by not going as fast. Now, that analysis has been really rejected greatly over the past years, because Industrial Revolution is measured by more than simply large factories with industrial workers and the number of machines. This is the point of the beginning of this. The more that we look at the Industrial Revolution, the more that we see that the Industrial Revolution was first and foremost an intensification of forms of production, of kinds of production that were already there. And thus, we spend more time looking at, the intensification of artisanal production, craft production, of domestic industry, which we've already mentioned, that is people mostly women but also men and children, too, working in the countryside. The rapid rise of industrial production was very much tied to traditional forms of production.
The debt today is so high, it's 200,000 rupees, 300,000 rupees of peasants who have no capital. They, who know within a year or two, when they accumulate that kind of debt, they will never be able to pay back. Where is the debt coming from? It's coming from a seed that is costing 100,000 to 200,000 rupees per kilogram, depending on what you got. The seed that used to be free, used to be theirs. Pesticides each time, the more they use, the more they have to use, 12 sprays, 15 sprays, 20 sprays. Pesticides used in just the last 5 years in the land areas of India have shot up by 2000%. That's what the free market and globalization have brought. And since we are talking about peasants, who have no money, who have no capital, they can only buy expensive seeds and expensive pesticides by borrowing. And who lend them that money? The same companies that sell the pesticides, which are the same companies that sell the seeds, as you know, are now also the major creditors.
I think there is intense competition at the moment to hire the most talented and most intellectually able people. There is a time when I think companies have many of the adventures in the world. That involves the company's world. It was the boss's world. Now I think it reverses the case. We have a shortage in talent base within countries and between countries, have an intense battle between companies to hire the most talented workers and also between countries, which are looking to recruit talented young people, talented young immigrants. We have this sense of immigrants being things that countries are battled to keep out, and immigrants want to get in, climb the walls. I think the opposite isn't the case. And the topic is that countries are trying to lure bright young people to get them to go to universities and get them to become immigrants. So, on many levels, talent is a premium. There is a shortage of talent, and so countries, companies, all sorts of organizations, of course, volunteer organizations as well as, are competing to hire the best and the brightest. You know, we have a baby boom population which is aging. We have an economy that is becoming more sophisticated. And so, for all those sorts of reasons, talent is a premium.
Why do the bumblebees pick some flowers over others? Researchers have known for a while that flowers' color can be a signal. Color in shorthand that says to a bee, "Hey, I get some good quality nectar here, want to stop by for a visit?" But new findings show that bees also use color to get clues about a flower's temperature. And according to a study from a British research team published in the journal Nature, some like it hot. Bees use up a lot of energy just to stay warm on some days. In fact, they can't even fly if they are too cold. So, if one flower is warmer than another, a bee can save some of its fuel by basking on that flower while it's doing its pollinating business. And it turns out that bumblebees consistently do choose warmer flowers over cooler ones even when the two flowers offer up the same quantity and quality of nectar. Some plants seem to be evolutionarily adapted to be slightly warmer because the warmer ones get visited more by the chilly bees. When it comes to getting pollinated, apparently the heat is on. And that is the buzz.